like to call the regular meeting of the East Lyme Board of Finance to order. Today's Wednesday, October 12th at 7 p.m. and would like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up is delegations, where any member of the public or any resident can speak to an item on our agenda tonight. Seeing as there's no one here, I think we can move on to the next item on our schedule, the approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any corrections or updates? If not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of September 14th, 2022?
I'll move to approve the East Lyme Board of minutes from the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting Wednesday, September 14th, 2022.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. The motion carries 5-0. Next, reports. Mr. Siri, our first selectman.
Thank you. You see, you can't say Kevin now because, and we just hired another no, we hired another Sandy. First thing too is we have our HR director that we've hired. She started a couple days ago. Her name is Sandra Spencer. She from town, and she started Monday. She's working with Dana now, who's they've been the assistant, so they've hit the ground running. So looking forward to a lot of help from her, and she's already done made her impact felt. We've also hired an IT director. His name is Dan Cleary. He's from Killingworth. He'll be starting on the 24th. He was in today filling out some of his paperwork with HR, so he's getting all set to start on the 24th. Some things too. We adopted the, we took care of establishing the Charter Revision Commission at our last meeting. Gave them their charge. It's online. There's 13 charges that we've given them. They also are free to add to that. They have to consider the ones that we gave them, but then they can add to that as well. One of the things, and their first meeting is on the 18th, next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. A very good group of people on it. I won't list all 11 of them, but 11 people are going to be on it. They have to report back with their draft report to the Board of Selectmen by August 1st of 2023, so that we can get everything done on that and say yay or nay to that, because by the 7th of September, the Secretary of the State's office has to have any question we plan on putting on our municipal ballot, which is when there would be a vote on that. So that's in progress right now. Also, too, Darrell Powell, we're in the process of turning that over to, or discussing the Board of Selectmen turning the 100 acres, which is not covered by the conservation easement, to Parks and Rec, to see what might be developed there, taking into consideration to protect wildlife, the pollinator areas, native plants, and so forth like that. So that's ongoing, and we're going to be looking at that. From the financial standpoint, too, gas is starting to go up. Joe Bergall was able to lock in 20,000 gallons at a reduced rate, too. So it's still several cents lower than it is right now. It's higher than it was a year ago, obviously. But he took advantage of it because it had been coming down. And when it started to go up, the supplier got a hold and said, look, I'll hold this price for you for a day. So he moved on it. Some fun stuff. This past Sunday, I attended Indigenous Peoples Day out at McCook's, and the Nehantic Nation. They reenacted the lighting of the fire on Wigwam Rock. That's how over 300 years ago they would light a fire on that, and that would be like a call to other nations and natives in the area to come and meet. It was the first time in over 300 years that fire had been lit. So sadly, you couldn't see too much at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, but it was just a nice thing and a very nice event because you just learn more and more about, we know how the McCooks gave the park to the town, but that was a property of the Neantic Nation before that, so it's more, you learn more and more. And there's roughly about 250 Neantic natives still in existence. Not all are in Connecticut, but I think most of them are. So, and I had the pleasure of talking with several of them. Some other good stuff. Right now it appears that Saturday, the 15th, Sif Bakery looks like it might be opening. I've talked to the police chief. We're making sure that if there's a traffic surge or something like that, we'll be able to address it. They've already done some traffic improvements there, lining the middle of Grand Street and Smith Avenue, putting shoulder lines in for parking areas, and they're going to be doing some enhancements on the stop signs to make sure people, if they come to the end of Granite, it'll say crossing traffic does not stop, so they won't think it's a four-way stop. So we're taking a look at that. Other things coming that also have come up, the Oyster Festival was on the 24th of September. Great day. It was busy from the moment it started till it ended. They roughly sold 71,000 tickets, and it's $1 a ticket. And probably about 25 to 30% of that will go to the Miracle League. So it was a really good turnout by townspeople and visitors to that. And I think that covers demolition is pretty much done. Up at the north end of town, they're still finalizing that. October 27th, I've talked about this before. At the high school, there's going to be a presentation on the Route 161 corridor project. It'll basically talk about the entire one from the high school all the way down to 156, but they anticipate most questions will be about the exit 74 interchange, which will be of interest to everybody because that's the one that'll be starting soon. So it pretty much covers most of what I had. Any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
The date for the hearing for the transportation?
Oh, it's October 27th, 6 p.m. in the high school auditorium.
Okay, thank you.
And they're going to have it set up very nicely too. They do this. They've been very cooperative. We even have some information posted on our websites and that as of right now too. But they've been very cooperative and keeping us informed all along the way. And the thought is that we're not going to wake up some morning and go, where did those construction vehicles come from? We're going to know ahead of time, and they've been really good about that. Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is our Director of Finance, Kevin Gervais.
Okay. All right. I gotta grab my mouse. All right. And last month I made the mistake of not giving my fiance a shout out. So I'll start off this meeting by saying hi to Pam, who's watching. 'Cause last time I said the whole family, and she goes, "Where was my shout out?" So yeah, can't forget the fiance. All right, so some of these are going to look similar from last month, and then I've tweaked it as we go along here, and hopefully I'll keep it to under 20 slides in the future. So right now we're on the overview slide, looking good. All right, so I'm just going to give you guys status updates for Nova Time, Munis, discuss what we're doing in the Treasury section of the office, and then go through the financial statement updates, the purchase card program we're rolling out, and then fund balance and some other topics. So Nova Time is on target for January of 2023. We are bringing on board the new HR director, and we're trying to work in the payroll specialist, but with short weeks like this, we had a 2-day window to turn around payroll, and we get paid every week. So it's not a very efficient system, but it's the one we're trying to revamp. So we're on target with Nova Time for January of 2023. Good news for Tyler, our ERP system, which is houses all the accounting information. I had another call with our rep, and you'll see now They are in line with my target of July 2023, so I've shaved 6 months off of our project lead time there. And now it's really just hunkering down and actually, implementing the system. We're going to be assigned next week when I'm away a project manager. So we're moving right along. So we shaved 6 months off, so maybe we can get another couple months. But July 23 rolls into the next fiscal year, so it's going to be good. Speaking of Tyler, when we implement Tyler July 23 with the new fiscal year, we're going to be implementing a new chart of accounts. So just to let you know, during this budget year, you're going to see two accounts: the old account numbers you're used to seeing, and the account it's going to go to when we follow the uniform chart of accounts from the state of Connecticut when we merge into the new system. All right. So a Treasury update. Shout out to Mr. Frazier, who spends about 5 to 10 hours in my office going over this section. We've made a lot of headway. We have transferred $10 million from institutions that were not bearing us great interest. One institution was giving us 5 bips, and so we closed our relationship there. We moved money just today. We moved $6 million from one banking institution to another, and I realized with the amount of fraud we have, we're utilizing positive pay now on all our accounts, but it's a daily task. Every day we're getting hit with a random positive pay. Someone's trying to pay their Chase bill or a Eversource electric bill against our accounts. So in the future, I'm just going to say financial institution. If you want to know the name, we'll go offline with it. So try to minimize who knows where our money is, so I don't have to keep trying to, put a shield around it. So good news, our primary bank, Webster Bank, that's out in the open. Webster Bank has increased their rate to 10 bips above the stiff rate in an effort to try to, keep us there and offer a very competitive rate. It's higher than the stiff rate. So we haven't moved any money out of Webster Bank. Webster Bank's the main operating bank. All of the tax collections are in Webster Bank, and so with that competitive rate, it really I think we were getting 0.8% before. So by going out asking all the banks, hey, who can give us the best rate? We've increased the rate higher than the stiff, so higher than the state of Connecticut is getting right now. So I have a meeting this Friday with Chelsea Groton Savings Bank, which I've also mentioned before, so I'll mention it again, to institute positive pay on the 2 last accounts that don't have positive pay. So all of our accounts will have positive pay. That includes ACH blocks, so no one can just zap the account.
Kevin, just for those of us who may not have had a banking background, do you want to
Okay.
explain to everybody what positive pay is? Because I think it's a
So
great
positive
broad
pay, how
control.
I interpret it is as a gatekeeper for your bank account. So if all of you are supposed to receive a check from the town of East Lyme, and your check number, your name, and the dollar amount do not match the file that we've imported, the list of AP checks, into the bank system, it kicks it out and says, hey, did you mean to pay Denise Hall $100,000, or is there something going on with this check? And it gives you the option to pay it and say, oh yeah, we forgot to import it into the bank, like a bank file to say, hey, these are okay to pay. Or, oh no, that's fraudulent, she's trying to pay off her Maserati outside, or, so so it really is like a gatekeeper. And so also think about in your personal lives, like I use Eversource, and they take it right out of my bank account. At the bottom of every check is the routing number and the account number, so all someone has to do is call that in. And say, okay, here's my routing number, here's my bank number, and the bank's going to try to zap the money from that account. Now, it may not be as simplistic as that, but I mean, just today we had someone trying to pay off their Chase card using the town's bank account, and it stopped it. So this is a great way of stopping all fraudulent activity from happening against the bank accounts, and that's very important when you have January and July when we're collecting 50% of the town's revenue in a month, and there's a nest egg sitting there. So it's very important to have controls in place to make sure that money's there. So,
Kevin, while you're on definitions, you may have covered this last time when I wasn't here, but could you define stiff and BIPs?
sure. Sure, my water. So STIF stands for short-term investment fund. The state of Connecticut runs a program that municipalities can piggyback on and pool their money, and that you can go on Google, type in CT STIF rate. The state of Connecticut updates this daily, and our banking institutions update this every Tuesday to reflect that rate. So the state of Connecticut pools, all their money, and they're getting this was yesterday, 2.99. Today it's 3.04. And when I say a BIP, 100 BIPs is 1% interest. So right now you can see Webster Bank is 3.05 BIPs, 305 BIPs. That's 305 BIPs. So 1.25 be 125 BIPs. I just like saying the word BIPs.
Right.
So,
But it's basically a money market mutual fund
Basis
that's
points.
run and managed by the state of Connecticut Treasurer's Office.
and so that's really, I use that as a benchmark. If we can't get better than that, we can put our money in the STIF.
Right.
So, we don't really have an incentive to underperform the STIF. The STIF is our benchmark, so we should be getting the STIF or better. And some financial institutions like Webster Bank caught on to that, and they didn't want to lose our, millions of dollars we have sitting there collecting interest, and so they increased it higher than the STIF rate to attract our business, which was in this day and age that was pretty rare. So Webster Bank really, I give them a lot of high regards for that one.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right. Financial statement update. All right. So as you are well aware, Fiscal Year 21 has not been filed yet. To the best of my knowledge, it was still in the CLA's technical review team as of last week. One update to all of this is I received an email from the Department of Health, one of their auditors, who says we need to restate the single audits for 2020. One of our, jumping the gun here, right here. So the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, payments were incorrectly added to the state single audit that should have been on the federal single audit. There's a state single audit of all the grants that the state of Connecticut gives us, and we expend, and then there's a federal list. The name, Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, you would think, and someone probably did think, that this is state money. However, the federal government kicks in, the EPA kicks in some funds here, classifying it as a federal grant. So this is just kind of like an oversight. So just something we're going to need to tackle going forward. So we're going to have 3 fiscal years open. 2020, 2021, 2022, while we're in 2023, budgeting in the future for 2024. So just remember that. And then I just skipped over briefly the fiscal year 2022 audit. Still in the same position. We're closing, we're paying our final 2022 invoices, closing the other POs, and that'll give us a good picture of what the revenues and expenses were for 2022. So next meeting we'll have a better glimpse into what 22 was. So, all right. So we talked about that. In the Department of Health, I had a Zoom meeting with the gentleman. He said they're going to be sending a letter. We're not the only municipality. I believe there were a half dozen others. So we're not alone on this island. All right, purchase cards. So right now the town has we have credit cards, and only a few people in town, mainly the heavy hitting departments that spend and need money, need to spend, not through invoicing, but today they need a pipe in the road. There's a problem at the PD. But what we found was cards are being used by more than one person, so the name on the card didn't mean anything, and at the end of the month, there'd be 20 or 30 bills for one card, and maybe of the 30, one or two don't have receipts to match. Well, you've got to go on a witch hunt to find those receipts. So the state of Connecticut has a purchase card program with J.P. Morgan Chase. Pretty sure it's J.P. Morgan Chase. So we just signed the paperwork last week. We're anticipating go live late December, early January. So everyone in town, any town employee that uses a card, the supervisors, the directors, for selectmen, they'll have their own card. So no one will go say, "Hey, Selectman Siri, where's your card?" If they're going to spend something on a card, they should have their own card. So everyone's responsible for their own card. So instead of having 5 or 6 cards in town, we may have 30 or 40. The nice thing about this purchase card program, it gives a 1.7 to 1.8% rebate at the end of the year. So whereas right now we are paying sometimes late fees or finance charges, this negates all of that, and on top of that, we're going to receive up to 2% back. So I think that's a nice little.
I have never seen a card. They all have my name on it.
And that's why we're going to P cards.
Good question. With so many cards out there, what is to stop somebody unauthorized from using one of those cards?
Well, if they do one swipe unauthorized, they will not have the card again. So we're really relying on, just to let you know, it's not like they're using this card for purchases that could normally be invoiced. So if we have an account with, the lumber yard over here to buy lumber on invoice, it's still going to be invoiced. This is for the, if the Government Finance Officers Association, there's a meeting coming up, and I want to go to the meeting, I have to register by this Wednesday, and I'm not going to have an invoice in time, swipe the card for that. The building official, he has to go to a meeting or something. Not for food, it's not for meals and entertainment. This is for like registering for a conference, the GoDaddy subscription, website host. There's things that that can't be invoiced. So those things would be on a card. So.
And then what's the review process? And,
Well, they still have to open a purchase order before they swipe the card.
Okay.
So they still have to follow the purchasing policy. They still have to get quotes if it's over a certain threshold. There is a pretty tight limit on this card for each card holder. So it's not like they're gonna, we're gonna look and be like, holy smokes, the Public Works, their budget is sky high. It's the cards. This is just if, all right, the U-shaped elbow that we need a new 6-inch piece of pipe or something. We didn't. We got to get it right now. It's for emergency situations and extraordinary situations, not for everyday use. J.P. Morgan would like it for everyday use, because I don't know how they're making money if they're giving us 2% back, but I look at this as a catch-all for anything that can't be invoiced. So, anyone have any other questions? All right. So these are just some things I wanted to talk about. And I think this would, I've got to do some more research, but one thing I'd like to see in the future is a grant fund for town grants, not boarded by this, strictly town. Prime example, the grant that the Emergency Operations Center had to go to a town meeting, and I think there was like 4 meetings I saw those people at. All of that, if there was a grant fund established, there'd be an additional, an initial approval by the Board of Selectmen. The grant would then be accepted by the town, go into this grant fund, and then they spend it in accordance with the grant guidance. If next year it rolls into next year, they can still spend it. It doesn't have to come back before the boards. So it's just a little best practice from when I was an auditor of what I saw, and just less town meetings. And it's just as transparent. So
That's one of the charges in the charter revisions
Yep.
that we do that updated.
Perfect.
Again, we have to spend money. Fortunately, Gene Quickman does not charge it, but he can charge us $500 for the
Each
the
town meeting.
moderator. He does not do that, and it does cost us several $100 to put the admin paper for the call for the town meeting every time we do
Plus it adds a month or two to the, adds a month or two to the
It
process.
adds a month. Here again, that's just it. If we want, for instance, if something came up in the middle of the month after your meeting, it really goes to another, because unless it's critical, and if it was critical, we'd have to schedule a bunch of special meetings, and it does make a difference.
So are those two things have to happen in conjunction, or could the grant fund be created from just an accounting perspective versus
Not
the
according
approval
to- Not
process?
according to
The
the
town
town
charter?
charter.
No.
Right now, the approval process has to go through Board of Select, Board of Finance, town meeting.
So, just what I would, long-term strategic plan, a nice grant fund, would save everyone a lot of time and headaches. All right, moving along. I know we're going to discuss this later, but just to stay focused, I have to put all these things in writing. Guidance from the Government Finance Officers Association, known as the GFOA. I had discussions with Denise earlier regarding the fund balance. And I have one of the handouts I gave everybody was, and we can talk about this later, but just briefly, the GFOA has a risk analysis template that you all have copies of. And what that does is it breaks down, I think there's 7 or 8 different categories, and they want the towns to fill this out and then assign themselves a rating based on their risks and how they're going to handle those. And then at the very end, there's a calculation. Based on that calculation, it tells you where your target fund balance should be. So I took an initial stab at it. If you disagree with something, let me know. It was just my initial thoughts. And I think it gave us a rating of 22, which is at the higher end of the second tier, so to speak, which was 17 to 25% fund balance target. Now, the initial paper I passed out there on the front, that's a list of all municipalities, a list of all the municipalities in our DERG. DERG is Demographic Reference Group. It's a State of Connecticut Department of Education list. And they break out municipalities into 7 or 8 different categories. And we are in category D?
D.
D. I don't have the paper in front of me. Kevin's looking at it. And so I went through, spent a few hours last couple days going through each of these groups, each of these municipalities, finding their fund balance. So most of them I could find. Some of them maybe a little outdated. They were, I saw some 2015s, some 2018s, and there's a few in 2020. But so this is our list of competitor municipalities, I like to call it. These are people that we can kind of compare ourselves to and benchmark to. And so of this list, I had a few, Stonington's in here, Waterford, I think Clinton, Cromwell. Some of these, as an auditor, I consider them very well-run towns. So, I think that's a good reference guide. Now, some of those don't fall in line with the GFOA. The GFOA, at minimum, the lowest fund balance for the Government Finance Officers Association's best practices is 2 months working capital, 16.7%. And then it just goes up from there. And now, how realistic is that? That's not for me to say. I'm just saying best practice, 2 months working capital, 16.7%. So, I know this is a little old, but this is the newest audited number I could find that we have. And before I close out fiscal year 22, a lot could change. So, this is the 2021 governmental funds balance sheets. So, I know it's a little tough to read. So my apologies. The general fund has a fund balance of $11.65 million. Of that, 260 is assigned, 3.4 million is unassigned. So really, this should be the unassigned fund balance, because that's what you're looking for, not that $260,000. But it was late last night when I was doing this. So roughly, it's about, you shave off $200,000, 14.8%, give or take, fund balance. And also my denominator is the general fund revenues. And that's different for every municipality. Some used revenues, some used budgeted revenues or budgeted expenditures. So it's, if the ins match the outs, it's the same. but it's all depending on the definition of, the definition we use of fund balance calculation. So, and this is as of 2021. When I was on the phone with Denise earlier today, it appears just at a glance, 2022 we're over in revenues. We brought in more revenues than we anticipated, and we spent less than we anticipated. So I anticipate this number to increase. Now the problem is, does the fund balance number increase by the same rate that the budget went up? Because if the budget's going up 3%, we need to increase fund balance, by 3% just to maintain status quo of the prior, because this is a moving target. So, all right.
And basically, the reason why we're looking at 2021 is because this is the last.
This is the last, and this isn't even. This is you can see the little cutoff up top there. It said draft.
Yeah.
So this was the draft financial statements, but this is in technical review now with the auditors. If this changes for whatever reason, I'll let you know next month or the month after. But usually, if it's in technical review, this is, pretty reliable. So, all right, and then
So, in the past, we've been at, I don't know if advised is the correct term, but we were led to believe from the auditors that 15% was a fairly healthy undesignated fund balance to have. And it seems as though with the calculations here that that's no longer the case. Has there been a change in philosophy or a change in risk evaluation?
So when I talked to another finance director this afternoon, I asked about that because, as you'll notice, some of them are as low as 5%. And so my question was, why are in discussions we were talking 15, upwards of 15% around there, and I said, how are some towns getting away with 5%? She goes, look at the date. That's probably the last time they've updated it. Prior to about 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was 5 to 8%. And only recently, I'm not quite sure the GFOA, when that was updated. It was in the last couple of years that it's been updated to 2 months of working capital. It wasn't always that high. I wouldn't be surprised if all the problems with the state of Connecticut over the last decade or so, in the early part of the decade, kind of led to that. So that's just off the top of my head. It has been evolving.
May also be the towns are, depending on how often they go to market, and are looking for the rating agencies to review. It's, I think, in my experience in West Hartford, they struggled to get it to 8%, and that was a AAA town. So you can see where you say, well, how can they be AAA if they've only got 8%, and here's the GFOA looking for something much larger than that. So it's really, I think, a function of the rating agencies looking at maybe more than just this one number, and what the towns do. Are there other factors that go into it that make them less concerned about it?
And I think a part of it too is the 2 months, the 2 months working capital, right? The 16.6%. If that number, starts dropping into the single digits, and you have a lot of debt service payments, multi-million-dollar payments at the beginning of the year, like we have a lot of payments in July 15th and August 15th. Well, if we're running, $11 million of a fund balance, all right, say that was $5 million, because we're healthy. Say that's $5 million, it was about 7%. All right, so June 30 rolls around, we have about $7 million bucks sitting there. $5 million, $7 million bucks. Our debt service payments could be, upwards $5-10 million. That'll deplete the entire, one expense out the door. There goes the entire piggy bank, and we got to wait until the tax collector wrangles everyone in to pay the bills. So it's, we're not always, our cash flows are not even throughout the year, especially when the schools are in session. At the beginning part of the year, there's a demand for cash.
Right.
So having that fund balance kind of helps us smooth out so we don't have to, ever take out a loan, just to have working capital.
Thank you. That
So-
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? So overall, government-wide, we have 18.8 million in fund balance. So, yeah, discuss that later. All right, so some other things I'd like to discuss, just to keep you apprised. I'm not asking for anything, but just in the future, if you're in another town, go on their finance department website, on the government website, and take a look and see what their finance office looks like. So what I would like, the vision for my department is just at a high level. I think there's a need now that our operating budget's $80 million. We have the water and sewer funds, bonded capital project funds. I think it's a worthy discussion to look at. We have a part-time senior accountant right now, but she's part-time, 8 hours a week, and really just focuses strictly on bank reconciliations. I would like to see that position kind of transformed into a senior accountant / purchasing agent. There's a good template in Bethel that has a similar position, and also Glastonbury. But right now, I think the auditors haven't picked it out. They've got enough going on. But eventually, when we start, everything cleaning up, one thing I think that is kind of lacking in the finance office is oversight of purchasing and centralizing the purchasing. Right now, departments are buying things at a department level, and they're the ones obtaining bids and quotes, and making sure they're getting the best prices. I think with an $80 million budget, I know almost $50 million is the Board of Ed, but even the $30 million chunk that's the town, I think it's worth to look at and say, okay, we need to establish a bid calendar to make sure every year or every other year we're going to go to bid for the big ticket items, and just follow best practices. There's a whole purchasing agent group in Connecticut that they can bounce ideas off each other. But I think now is a good time to look at that. This person's also purchasing agent / senior accountant, so they would take over some day-to-day activities. Help review and process payroll, review and approve invoices. Like I said, a problem we have right now in our finance office is payroll is due to the bank Wednesday at 3 p.m. Well, we lost Monday. She can only work so many hours on Tuesday, and then you have from 8 in the morning to 3 p.m. to get payroll out. So, excuse me, there is a need to have an additional accountant in the office to review documents, review work, and just kind of keep the ship in the straight and narrow. And expanding on that, I listened to the prior couple Board of Finance meetings before I started, and when Ron Nossick spoke, I believe it was August, at the Board of Finance meeting, he discussed, I think it was 28 minutes in, just saying, bringing in 3 temporary workers to help close the books every year, because he thought that's the workload of bringing 2 to 3 people in to help close the books, reconcile everything, and get ready for the audit. As the finance director, I don't think the best decision would be to hire temporary workers every year to close the books and catch up on the year's worth of activities. I think that should be a monthly, there should be a hard monthly close, quarterly financial statements. So right now, all of this falls on, I'm the only, accountant in the office. I have 3 clerks, and they do a great job, but there's more work than I have time available in my life. So with that in mind, something else I think, at first, we have 3 financial years we're being audited right now. We have to reopen 2020, 2021, and 2022. I think a financial statement accountant to come in and help clean up the financial statements and bring in best practices. I know that's my favorite word, best practices. You hear it all the time. But there's certain schedules that our financial statement just doesn't have right now that I think would benefit the town. the biggest one I'd like to see is the changes in fund balance for bonded capital projects and CNR, and also when we get a grant fund, we'll do one for that as well. But it breaks down the fund balance for each fund by project, so you know, hey, this fund has an unassigned fund balance here. Or there's this fund needs an inflow of capital because it's, we overspent some projects in the years past, and we have to have a day of reckoning. So I think this would really, our financial statements, I believe, are about 90 pages. I think we could add about 15 more pages of schedules to really be a little more transparent and shed some light. So getting into the meat and potatoes, like that wasn't all meat and potatoes. I had department head meetings last week with pretty much every department, and I'm just going to touch on a few items I think the Board of Finance should be aware of. Department head meetings, police. The police overtime is higher than budgeted, and when I spoke to the chief, it was kind of a brace for more. There's a lot of sergeants out right now, and so there's a big pressure. Three sergeants are out, I'm seeing. So there's a pressure on the overtime. Conversely, the police regular salaries is under budget. So we were expecting about 26% of the money spent, and they were at 23%. But when you're talking about millions of dollars, that's a couple $100,000. So we will. I'm hoping that the overage of overtime counters the underspend in police salaries. So, and something else I noticed in talking with Kathy Wilson, the Commissioner on Aging, or the Director of Commissioner on Aging, whatever her title is, social worker. In ARPA, in the ARPA fund, I think it was $57,000, give or take. But when there's, if you're going to do a salary for $57,000 and it's a full-time position, there's some benefits and things like that we have to talk about. So that's an open item right now, and I have a meeting with Kevin Seary, myself, and Kathy Wilson. Is that in November? First week of November, Kevin? So that's going to happen there. And then another item, the building official salary is running under. We have an interim building official right now and then a part-timer helping out. So we're seeing a little savings there, and we're going to talk about that later. Animal control officer. All right, so my last slide. Hold on, I missed the slide here. I did. All right, the land use office, or I call it land use. I think it's planning, zoning. That office downstairs. What is it? Building. The building office. There's like 8 departments in that one side of the building. I never know who's who. I was told they brought in about $75,000 in a week due to a code change.
Code changed October 1st, so September 30th, everybody ran in with their new home permits because they didn't want to have to go with the new code changes, so that's where it came from.
And we made out like
4 houses for the orchards, and then Jason Zaglia came in with more Sleepy Hollow Hills.
what she said. About $75,000. So that was a nice unexpected little windfall for us there. And as we discussed earlier, the interest rate is going up and up and up. And so is the mortgage rates, but that's all separate can of worms. So right now I have this at 2.99. It's actually 3.04. Talking about expenses, union contracts. We are calculating retro pay for the UPSU. So you'll notice next month when I give you out the handouts, the salary contingency line for the union's retro, there'll be some cash taken out of there. The Park and Rec Director, as everyone knows, Dave Putnam is retired. We have a new Park and Rec Director. So when Mr. Putnam retired, we paid him out of the retirement liability. We paid Anna Johnson out of the retirement liability account. So that is up more than in the past. They were here for a long time. Some accounts were under budget. We are under budget a little bit in HR manager, but I imagine as the year goes on, that'll change now that we've hired one. And then building officials, as previously discussed. And then just last little caveat, we locked in fuel prices last week, so our fuel's going to be higher than anticipated, and we'll monitor that and see how that progresses through the warm winter. I'm hoping, because I don't want to pay $5 a gallon for oil at my house. I have the most inefficient house on the street, I swear. So I don't have anything to report this month, but I put it in here so I will remind myself next month to get a report for ARPA. So what the budget looks like. We received all the money, so we have the 5.4 million, I believe it is. I have a note in my office what it is. So we just received October 3rd. We received the last chunk of that money. So all the projects for that are ongoing. And then any project that is closed with any money open, I'll let the boards know about. So, and my favorite slide. Questions. Any questions? Mr. Steele.
Yes, Kevin, Anna would provide us with an approximation, a calculation of where we're at with the undesignated fund balance each month. Is it possible to receive a report like that, or
We could do that.
especially if we're looking at perhaps elevating what we had originally anticipated?
Okay.
in that regard?
Did she do that on a monthly basis, or quarterly basis, semi-annual, or every month she just
Every
updated
month.
that report?
Every month it
Okay.
was updated.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
And I appreciate the detail that's in your presentation, and you pointing out some of the ups and downs within the various departments, but maybe a straight listing of top 5 or top 10 expenditures, revenues each month. We used to receive something like that.
Of like the most variable, or just the highest expense? Okay, yeah, whatever you, top 10, top 5, which one would you like?
5 would be fine.
Top
I
5?
don't want to put any more work on you.
So I think that would probably be like police salaries, fire salaries, probably
I
the big
think
salary lines.
I think I'm sure there's a template saved in there.
Okay.
That,
Yeah, she must have something.
yeah,
Just-
Or-
Just highlight the higher ones.
I probably have an old
Okay.
one somewhere that I can,
I'll dig, I have all our files.
yeah.
Just a matter of finding it. And so it was top 5s, and then it was fund balance.
Thank you.
No
And
problem.
I really appreciate you being able to take things down to layman's terms too, not just for the board, but if there's anybody that's viewing the meetings, it's helpful for them, and you do a nice job of that. So thank you.
Yeah, my mother, my stepdad, and my fiance are watching. So if if there's 2 watchers, they're all my family. So and possibly my aunt who lives in town. So, all right.
No, thank you. That was very comprehensive, and I like the way we kind of keep things sort of updated as we go throughout the
Yeah,
year.
absolutely.
That-
A month ago, I did not know what dips,
Yeah, Scott Frazier. When I call him, he goes Bips. So I think that's my nickname now.
There you go.
With the police, we do, the 3 sergeants right now, back surgery, broken wrist, work-related, and recovering from a broken ankle requiring extensive surgery, also work-related. Those, there's not much you can do in a case like that.
Yeah.
Is that, as I recall, is that how many sergeants we have?
Now, we
Oh,
have, I think, 7 or 8 sergeants.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have more. But now, there's a couple days every week where there's an overlap. That's all right, but everyone else has to be filled in an overtime basis by
Right.
a sergeant. So.
Right.
Okay, so, next item on the agenda, new business, the animal control officer funding. If anyone watched the Board of Selectmen meeting, they talked a little bit about having changing the part-time to a full-time and sharing that with, of course, Waterford. So I don't know, Kevin, if you want to.
I'll start. The animal control officer came to you several months ago, and he also came to our Board of Selectmen, and obviously the Police Commission, and he demonstrated the clear need for the map there. The clear need for to go full-time with the assistant animal control officer. These are two people who we never get anything but compliments on. I mean, they do a really good job, and that, it's not the reason. The reason is that they were both, there are calls to substantiate why we needed to go to this. We were able to identify some savings this year, significant savings in the building department this year, so that would be a source of the funding. Kevin will talk more to that in a minute. And Waterford, I talked to the first selectman over there, very much in favor of it. When we went to our meeting last week, he had it, they were behind it, but he hadn't quite identified this funding source yet. That has since been done, but we do not have a written, yes, we do it, so we're going to do it. So our motion was conditional on a written agreement with Waterford, so just needs getting there. Talking about the financing right now, we already have remaining in the account about $14,379, and if we brought them on November 1st, it would be the difference of about $10,000. We'd have to fund this with an additional $10,452. So that's what we'd be looking to move. Is my correct, Kevin?
You are correct. So there's two accounts we're moving money from.
Yeah. Okay. Two. I'm sorry. And also two, she was making Allison, the assistant ACO, was making $18 and change an hour. That, as a full-time employee, that would be the lowest of anyone in town. So just for the remainder of this year, we're bringing her up to 20. As of November 1st, she'll go to $20 an hour. And Kevin would answer any questions.
You're asking for an additional $10,000 to make her full-time, is that what I understood?
So it's a transfer from two different lines. We're transferring $14,379 projected. So I'm expecting to spend another $3,000, for the rest of the month. So see at the top it says $3,066.
Where's that paperwork?
I don't know if you got one.
Nothing.
So $3,066 expended, leaving $14,379, give or take. I'm hoping she doesn't work overtime. So transfer $14,003 from the part-time labor, and then transfer $10,452 from the building officials line, which is currently $68,000 your budget. It's a sporadic. The part-timer is sporadic.
The building officials, we usually had a full-timer and two part-timers. Now we just have the full-time, interim, and one part-timer. So we've seen, that's what we've seen.
Demand has dropped off with the building
No,
official.
demand hasn't, but they have still an extremely efficient job. I mean, they're caught up, and again, nothing but compliments, and people are very happy with the services they're getting.
So it's a total of $24,000 that you're asking for from two different sources?
Transferring both, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not an additional appropriation, it's just a budget transfer.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to understand.
So, and are we not concerned that the building department might, have a greater need, and we will have taken this money from there, or just want
I wouldn't have said okay. I mean,
Yeah.
even if we brought someone in, probably around the first of the year to go back to a full-time and two part-timers, we'd still be well within budgetary guidelines.
So there's $163,000 budgeted for the chief building official, and then the I don't know, per diem or building official line.
And the
Well,
part-time.
we spent 26, so combined we've spent 2 months. So we have a whole month, of that we haven't spent, essentially a month and a half. So we're under budget, 8% on 160,000. About $15,000, so 10,000. We can easily cover 10,000. And we're projecting to maintain this level of underage, you want to call it, underspend, like Kevin said, into January. So,
Probably, yeah. 'Cause I talked to Ed Scarpati, the interim, once we got HR and everybody's on board now, now we can actually, Kevin's on board, now we can concentrate back onto the building side. So we'll put somebody, actually, we're looking to bring someone in as a full-time assistant under him for a while, so we're gonna be well within the budgetary constraints and guidelines for the building department.
Anyone else have any? So
and
then-
also, I broke down not last year, next year.
Mhm.
So next year, full-time annualized will be 74.5 with benefits.
Yeah.
So just to break down a projection into next year.
All right, so then in.
That's for one divided by two is 37.
Yeah, whatever it takes up that.
Yeah.
That was just a projection though, to show you what next year's budgetary impact will be.
And then, so we would be looking for a motion to approve the transfer of these funds from these two different account numbers. Maybe you can frame that up so that in our minutes here we're
Okay.
we know exactly where we're, because it's not clear from this which account number.
Okay. All right. Let me find the other account number.
Yeah.
For us to get an account for that.
Yeah, for the part-time, so the motion for the transfer of.
Oh, there's a. All right, I've got the two numbers right here. It was right in front of me. I was looking at it. All right, so the part-time salary numbers. You want the account number?
So we're looking to
Make a motion.
make a motion to move funds from the part-time
Part-time salary line.
of 01-25-226-100-412 part-time salary
in the amount of $14,379.
in the amount of $14,379 and move that to the full-time salary line
Correct, the one right below it.
of 01-25-226-100-211. And this motion to approve the transfer is just contingent upon getting the paperwork
I would say
from
written confirmation from Waterford. That
written
they're-
confirmation
that
from
they're
Waterford.
providing the 50% required by them.
Do you want to split up into two, or do you want to do the second part of the money as well, in that same one?
No, do the same part, yeah.
And the same thing? Okay.
It has to all run together as
Okay,
one
so
motion.
the second part, 10,452.
You move to, and to transfer from, what line?
It's building official,
Okay, and do we have the building official?
01-01 -104 -100
Part-time.
into the full-time. That's the title for that account is just building official,
Building official.
and then transfer that into the full-time salary line mentioned
Okay.
above.
All right, so for the full motion, I'll go ahead and make it since I'm right here. I'd like to
You'll
make,
give me a copy of it afterwards. I have no paperwork on any of this.
yeah,
I'll give you my copy.
we've got it. So I will make a motion to approve the transfer contingent upon receiving the written confirmation from Waterford that they have approved their funding of this position. So we will move to transfer funds from the part-time salary account 01-25-226-100-412 to the full-time salary account number 01-25-226-100-211 in the amount of $14,379. And then also to approve moving the funds from the building account 01-104-100-212 in the amount of $10,452, also to the full-time salary account number of 01-25-226-100-211. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. So
Is there any further
So it's
discussion?
14,379 on one, and then 10,452 on the second.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Discussion. So, is this full-time salary account in the animal control officer department? Does that take into account the animal control officer that's already there?
Yeah,
as a
the full-time account is for both of them.
For both of them?
Yeah, just
together?
like.
Right, it's
the
not a
police
separate
and-
account.
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
separate. And there's an overtime account there too. And that's where whichever town uses them on an overtime basis pays the overtime.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No opposed, no abstentions, the motion carries 5-0-0. You know, Kevin and I are still like working on our
Yeah, I'll have a,
yes.
next time I'll have a
Yes.
written motion.
There's a lot going on, and I think you're doing a great job of, you know, coming in, finding everything, moving forward.
Well, just the quarterly meetings, the department heads,
Yeah.
he's identifying, sitting down,
Yep.
tracking where spending should be, where it is. These are just really great tools for them.
Yep. Yep. And, you know, again, part of this is, you know, there's change, and so I'm very much open to finding other ways to do things. I know at some point we might say, you know, let's email all of this material to everyone, or let's, you know, so we can bring in our iPads and look at it online. So there's you know, there's always room for change and improvement. So next on the agenda, unfinished business. I know you kind of included the update on the audited financial statements. So I don't know whether you have anything more you wanted to add to that.
So, I would just say we have 3 now, instead of 2, so we're going in the wrong direction. But we've got to do what's right. So, I don't imagine it. I haven't spoke to Ron Nossick specifically about the 2020 audits. We haven't been official. You know, they told us informally that this is coming. So we haven't formally been, you know, put on the clock, so to speak. I'm not quite sure how much this is going to cost to re-audit. There's going to be some dollar impact here, I imagine.
Just out of curiosity, with the 2020,
Yep.
and like, is that something that the auditors should have identified when they did the audit?
So, as a former auditor, I will say these are our financial statements. So they're just there to, you know, express an opinion on them. We prepare them, you know, and all the schedules and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, the buck stops with us. I mean, should the auditor have caught it? We're not the only municipality this happened to. There's a half dozen of them. So.
And clearly the title.
Yeah. I mean, I would have done that, so I'm happy that didn't happen under my tenure. Because state drinking water fund, where's that going? Right into the state. That's like the easiest one. So I would say at the end of the day, you know, the buck stops with the persons whose financials they are, right? Because they're just auditing them. So it's really, the onus is on us, I would say. Maybe there's a split there, but I don't know should they have caught it? Should we have caught it? Should someone have caught it between the two of them? Maybe. So that's just something, not quite sure there. And then fiscal year 22, it was expected to be done September 30th. And then as we started going into the later weeks of September, I kept emailing Ron Nozick, and it was still in quality review. And these are, it's a 100-page financial statement. I understand, coming from the audit side, I understand, there's deadlines, 9:30. So he's, anticipated October 30th, which is a few weeks away. And just so everyone's aware, this Friday I leave for 2 weeks to go to South America, and I don't come back until the 28th, which is a Friday. So unless there's we get these tomorrow, and I'm able to, at Boston Airport, finish the management discussion and analysis, it's looking sometime in November. So.
If you can get it done before, I think the first question I asked when I came on this board was when that was going to get done, and that was December. So if we could get it done before a year.
I always say government takes a little longer, so December sounds
I've been on this thing
realistic.
I've been on this thing since day one, and I'm looking forward to getting these things done on time, because every year, when looking back and seeing that we're late, every year this is.
Yeah, I have a.
Like the best practices you're putting forward, amen. You got to preach right to the choir here.
I have a certificate in my office from the last. It was just in a drawer from 2002 when the town of East Lyme received an award of excellence on their comprehensive annual financial report in 2002. So I'm not sure if that's the most recent one. That's the most recent one I have in my office, but that's 20 years ago. So we're probably not going to get it for 2022. Being that we're probably going to have to go on extension, but maybe 23 sounds like a good year.
I've got 3 more years. I'm going to be just as much pain on this thing. So anything we get on the audit and financial reporting, I'm looking forward to see what's coming down the road.
Yeah. I want to close at least one of the years. So I imagine, and it sounded like to me that drinking water fund that caused us problems with the 2020 audit. I think before we even filed the 21 audit is on there as well, so those are probably going to have to be redone. So when they come to do the 2022 audit, right, they're going to be re-auditing grants from 2020 and 2021 as well. So hopefully we can get those 2 years closed out. So even if we close the financial statements for 21, we're still going to have the state and federal single audits, outstanding.
Yeah.
So there's a few pieces in the air. So and that's before we get into 2022 and discuss the 2024 budget. So
Okay.
a lot going on.
And so then, also under unfinished business, as we alluded to before, the possible amendment of fund balance policy. So I feel like we've been talking about this for a while. We wanted to update it. We want to do it right and, not have to revisit it. And so as Kevin and I have been talking, it should be more than just sort of pulling a number out of the air that we're comfortable with. And so he's passed out this risk analysis tool. So I would like you guys to all have a chance to go through basically, what he's done. There's a bunch of questions, and he has gone through and put down what he thinks the right answer is to all of the different pages. And maybe what we can do is email it to the Board of Finance too, because sometimes it's a little bit easier when you're going through the tabs.
Yep.
But I think I think this is great to have this as the background. Whether we end up making the decision that we want to follow the output that it comes up with or not is,
It was a little shocking.
yes. So, but I think it's a good tool to say, you know, like, why are we doing this? You know, what are the risks that we're trying to make sure we have enough in our savings account if something happened to any of these, you know, something happened here, or what, again, like, you know, what are our different bills, like our debt, you know, how that flows through. So if everyone can take a look at this, and I think also looking at, you know, what the other towns do, does it make sense? You know, then I think adding in the GASB 54 language to spell out exactly what the different fund balance definitions are and what ones we would be using, you know, if we're going to use, you know, revenues or expenditures or whatever in the calculation. And then hopefully we can come back and everybody will have had a chance to take a look and say, do they agree with, is there something, you know, we would change? Like, for example, you know, what is a risk? You know, yes, we're a coastal town, we have risk of flooding, and that could be, you know, a huge cost. You know, millstone is a risk, but how realistic is that risk, you know, that you would set aside? You know, if millstone has a problem, I'm not sure that our having money in a fund balance is going to solve anything. So, but, you know, it's still a risk that you might want to think about. So we're going to think about it some more and maybe update the policy next month, or, you know, come back at our next meeting and discuss whether we're in agreement with all of these and look to see what we would want to use for our frame. I know we had talked about 10 to 15%. Maybe that's a little bit low based on, you know, the GFOA analysis, but
and I will say, just, you know, in my research here of looking at these 20 plus municipalities, everyone does it a little differently. Some of them I thought were pretty unique, like I think it's Rocky Hill. Their fund balance is 5%, and if it hits anything more than 6%, the excess above the 6% gets swept into the CNR fund. So there's, and then the other one I liked was just different. Stonington, 2 months of working capital, best practice, plus $1 million. So they had the percentage of where they wanted it to go, 16% fund balance, plus $1 million. I don't know why they specified $1 million, but that was theirs. So every municipality, and some have thresholds. The fund balance is not to get below, you know, 5 or 10%. Others have a threshold on the higher end. If it's higher than, you know, like some of them had 17%. If it was higher than 17%, then it's to be used next year to offset, you know, tax increases or whatever it is.
Right.
So there was a lot of, I mean, every town has different language around this. So this is really, you know, it was an enlightening exercise.
Yeah.
So what each town did.
okay. Anything more on fund balance?
So I'll email this to everybody,
Mhm.
and then if they want to email me back any, if they make any changes to it, we can, you know, I can print them out and
Mhm.
we can go over all the changes together and decide on what, you know, just as a
Yeah.
rough idea. So
Okay. Next, public discussion, and we have no public here. Next, board comments. I just wanted to make a comment. I know at our last meeting, the superintendent, Mr. Newton, apprised us of a deficit there, and I know we left it that he was going to, you know, update us regularly. They were not able to have any presence here tonight, so I did ask him whether, you know, he could provide me something just to update. He said that there have been no major changes yet from the last meeting and update. The budget is frozen, which is beginning to save some money. They are factoring in the extra cost for the fuel that had been anticipated, and that he would have some updated numbers for us at the next meeting. And I just asked for clarification when he said budget frozen. He says they have frozen all department district spending other than essential items, which needs to be approved by the central office. So we look forward to getting a more comprehensive update at the next meeting. And that's it. For me, go ahead,
Okay.
Richard.
Yes, just looking at the minutes from the last meeting where I was absent, I just kind of reread them, and under Mr. Newton's report, there's a bullet point beneath the freeze would be the biggest thing, that they will start their budget meetings in mid-November and are looking at heating costs, etc. They will be notified of the dates so that they can attend as they did in the last year. I'm kind of confused with all the theys, and I don't know if one of them was meant to be that the Board of Finance will be notified, so that
As I recall,
they
they're,
will be able to attend.
yes.
Okay, that's what I thought, and I know we already approved the minutes, so it's too late for any corrections on that, but I just needed clarification
Yep.
for myself. After attending the last couple of years of these joint budget meetings, I would like the Board of Finance to be able to be enabled to have a greater participatory role in these meetings. It seemed like we were primarily just ears at these meetings, and that input from the Board of Finance really wasn't gathered, or I don't even know if it was desired. But I think when we get to the budget season and we're looking at the Board of Education's budget within the town budget, we're not allowed to make any adjustments to line items at that
Right.
point. And so I think before the budget gets rolled up into a large budget that then gets presented to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, it would seem to be that these meetings, as they're preparing their budget, would be an opportune time for members of Board of Finance, if they so wish, to be able to give some commentary on the budget, and that it actually be a collaborative process rather than just an eyewitness process.
Yes, you're right that there's, it's just the dollar amount that we approve. I did attend a couple of the budget workshops, and I think that they were open to any of my questions. Having been in office all of about a week or so, it was
Right.
still, it wasn't really at the point where I could, drill down on anything, but I think that they would be certainly willing to entertain any of our questions. I also sat down with the superintendent and their finance director, and they gave me every opportunity to walk through things. So I think that they would be open, so I guess it's incumbent upon us. I know, Peter, you've indicated that you wanted to attend. I planned on attending. I don't think there's a limit on how many people could attend.
Just remember, if you have more than 3, you have to post
As
it
to-
as one of your meetings
Yeah,
as well.
that's right. But yeah, we're all in this together, right?
Right.
So, anyone else have any comments for? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.